The House is scheduled to vote as early as tomorrow on President Biden's $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. The legislation will include $1,400 stimulus checks for millions of Americans, with money also going to any children they might have. The bill will also include a bonus of $300 a week for unemployment and billions of dollars for vaccine distribution and other key priorities. However, the Senate stripped progressive priorities passed by the House, most notably the $15 an hour federal minimum wage increase. I want to bring in Representative Katie Porter for her reaction to the bill. She's a Democrat serving California's 45th district, which is in Orange County. She sits on the House Oversight and Natural Resources Committees and joins me now from Irvine, California. Representative Porter, welcome. Great to have you with us. You are a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and the group's leader, Pramila Jayapal, says the changes made to the bill are relatively minor concessions. But other progressives, such as New Jersey's Bonnie Watson Coleman, say they question whether they can even still support this bill. Do you believe this measure does enough to help working families who need economic relief?
We have to be honest with the American people that there is still outstanding need. I don't know that this bill does enough. I'm not sure any one bill could do enough to address the wide-ranging and very deep consequences of this pandemic and the economic recession. But this bill is meaningful help for American families who have already waited far too long. Millions of Americans will see their unemployment benefits extended and an increase in those unemployment benefits. They're going to receive stimulus checks, and they're going to get an expanded child tax credit to help them meet the needs and the expenses of raising a child, particularly in this pandemic. There are a lot of wins here, but I want to be very clear. This bill never was intended to be everything that the American people need, and so we're going to keep working on things like the minimum wage.
Well, you just brought up the child tax credit that is in the bill, but you in particular have fought to help single parents. 2 weeks ago, you said the bill made no sense for single parents. What issues do you think this bill fails to address when it comes to single parents?
The expanded child tax credit is an incredible investment in the next generation. It's not something just to help parents or to help kids, but it's something to help every single American to grow our economy, to invest in the next generation workforce by making sure that kids get adequate housing, nutritious food, and the access to high-quality childcare. The way the bill is constructed really reflects a long-standing problem going back decades and decades in our policy, which is to fail to recognize that the costs of raising a child are not just the same for single parents as they are for married couples. They're actually even higher for single parents who don't have that second adult to help out with childcare. So what we pushed for was to make the same eligibility threshold for single parents and for married couples, because the child tax credit is not about the adult or their marital status. It's about the help for the kid who's going to be receiving those additional benefits. So we didn't get there yet in this bill, but I'm going to keep working on it. But overall, that does not mean, should not take away from the fact that the expanded child tax credit is a really, really meaningful help to parents around the country.
So keeping with this issue for a moment and looking beyond this particular bill, what long-term changes to the tax code do you believe are necessary to help single parents? And based on your conversations with Democratic leadership, are these goals realistic?
The conversations that I've had around eliminating the single parent penalty for the child tax credit and really evaluating how we treat single parents under the tax code generally have been very productive. When I was serving in the last Congress, I was the only single mother of young children in the Congress. And the fact that I'm asking these questions and raising these issues and engaging people on it is a big part of how we begin to restructure things. There are times in the tax code where I think it makes sense to think about adults, to think about earners. A married couple has potentially 2 earners, has 2 adults. A single parent household may only have 1. But when it comes to the child tax credit, it is about the child. And so this different treatment of heads of household and married couples simply doesn't make sense. I didn't get it done yet in this bill, but I'm going to keep fighting and keep working on this issue.
I think a lot of single parents would thank you for that. All right, so speaking of taxes, you chair the House Natural Resources Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations, and you've crafted legislation to reform federal oil and gas leasing legislations. How will your proposal help both the environment and taxpayers?
It's a huge help to taxpayers because we've essentially been selling the right to drill on our public lands on the cheap. It's a giveaway to the fossil fuel industry. And the rates that we charge for drilling and to rent that public land have not been changed in decades and decades and decades, particularly for onshore public lands, the lands that people live closest to and the lands that are easiest for us to enjoy. So what my bill would do is to raise that rate for onshore public lands, and then to index it to inflation going forward, because one of the things we found is the fossil fuel lobby comes in time and time again, and they like the sweetheart deal that past Congresses have given them. But we're going to attempt to make sure that this is fair for everyone. From the environmental standpoint, paying the market rate is really the bare minimum we ought to be doing, and making sure that we're forcing companies to choose between drilling on public lands and alternative strategies for investment in energy.
So I want to ask you more broadly about Democratic goals under this administration. The House, as you know, has passed several major bills, including a massive voting rights overhaul and reforms to policing. But all of these measures can't get anywhere without elimination or at least reform of the filibuster in the Senate. Do you believe the party is shooting itself in the foot by not trying to get rid of that rule?
I absolutely think that the Senate, hopefully both Democrats and Republicans, need to have a serious conversation about the filibuster. It's clear that support for eliminating it is growing among many Democrats. We saw a number of prominent Democrat senators come out for the first time on the issue just in the last few days as they saw the harm that the filibuster under its current form is doing. But one of the most important things, I think, is for Americans to understand broadly across party ideology, the filibuster isn't some kind of sacred constitutional thing. Its origins are in structural racism, in trying to disenfranchise Black voters and prevent the passage of civil rights legislation. Our Senate can and did function for a century without the filibuster, and it can do so again. So I support eliminating the filibuster. I think at minimum we have to reform it to make it a much less frequently used tool.
California Representative Katie Porter, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.